Welcome to the Author Your Life podcast, where you can write a new script for your life and become the hero of your story. I'm your host, David McRae. You are the author of your life. Let's get started.
All you have to decide is what to do with the time that is given to you.
In my experience, there's no such thing as luck.
It is not our abilities that show what we truly are. It is our choices.
Hello, my friends. Welcome back to the Author Your Life podcast. Today on the podcast, we have Stuart Doughty as our guest. Now, Stuart is a personal development coach and business consultant who teaches people how to use the power of the mind to improve their results and transform their lives. He is trained and mentored by Bob Proctor, one of the world's leading personal development teachers, and has been one of his associate consultants for over 5 years. He has been a student of personal development for over 30 years. Stuart helps people uncover their purpose and design their lives, and achieve goals beyond what they believe is possible. Stuart is a former international journalist, and he returned to the UK in 2015 after 20 years abroad, and now lives in Bristol. And this is where I had the opportunity to meet Stuart. During a year of living in Bristol myself, I met Stuart through Toastmasters, the international organization for helping people improve public speaking. And here, me and Stuart really kind of struck things off. We've got a similar passion for personal development and sharing a message. And when I launched this podcast and I was thinking of guests that I wanted to bring on, Stuart was one of the first names that came to my mind. I've really enjoyed my conversations off the air with Stuart over the time that we've known each other. And I certainly enjoyed this conversation on the air. And we discussed some things that I didn't know about Stuart. So I was learning just as much as hopefully you'll learn during your time listening to this. Some of the things that Stuart talks about in this interview are that you never stop doubting. So you have to keep choosing to believe. There is no truth, but the truth you make for yourself. Stuart talks about how to create new mental paradigms. He reveals his secret of happiness. And together, actually, we discuss the importance of making decisions and how you need to make decisions in order to move forward in your life. This was a very deep and insightful conversation. And as I said, it went a lot deeper and a lot more insightful than I anticipated going into this interview. And I really learned some things myself about Stuart and from the things that he teaches. And I know that that will transfer to you as well. So without further ado, please enjoy this interview with Stuart Doughty. Okay, Stuart, thank you very much for joining me today. I'm really pleased to have you here. And the guests are going to find out a little bit more about you and what you do in the description and the show notes, but I feel that that kind of stuff you can always just read off a website or a bio. It doesn't really tell you about the person behind the bio. So what I'd like to know first is, why do you do what you do? We kind of know the what, and people can find out the what easily, but as Simon Sinek says, start with why. Why are you doing what you're doing?
Yeah, it's a good question, isn't it? Thank you, David. Yeah, I appreciate the opportunity to actually share my story. You know, I think there's nothing more that people like doing than sharing their own story. And it's funny because often you don't get a chance to do it. You know, people don't have a long listening for that kind of thing. So it's always a pleasure to be asked to actually do that. But it's funny as well, because sometimes when you're asked that question, you think, well, yeah, why do I do that? I've never actually examined it enough. So, you know, as a personal development teacher, and as you know, I work with Bob Proctor's company, the reason goes back so far that about 30 years ago, you know, my life was a bit of a mess. I was a journalist living in Australia. I'm English, but I lived in Australia and New Zealand for a few years when I was in my 20s. And it wasn't working. I wasn't a very good journalist. I wasn't very good in relationships. I wasn't really clear what I was going to get out of life or what I was going to do. I just didn't feel I was in the right place, or, you know what? I didn't really feel I was the right person. I wasn't whoever I thought I was. wasn't enough. And I actually got into personal development at that time. I went to a seminar. And I was so blown away by the guy who was doing it. You know, this is back in 1987. And I'd never heard anything like it before. Never seen anyone teaching what he was teaching about the mind, about our potential, about who we could be. And it blew me away, and I just really wanted to do that. But it took me 25 years to actually do it. So I investigated personal development. I was a real kind of self-help junkie for a while, reading lots of books, going to seminars, and saying, I'd like to be like that. But it took me 25 years to be like that because I didn't think I could. There came a point, though, where I realized that I had to do it. So there's that point in life where something causes you to change. And for me, it was, you know, I actually had a car accident in America. I was living in Phoenix, and there was a multi-vehicle pileup on a freeway in Phoenix. There was 7 cars, and I was one of them. You know, I escaped with no injury whatsoever. My car was written off, and it was that moment, you know, where you go, wow, I don't think I'm doing what I want to do, and my life could be over right now. And it was that moment where I looked back to 30 years and remembered who that person was that taught me about what's possible. And I went, yeah, it's time for me to do that. So I'm doing it because, you know, why am I doing it? I felt drawn to do it. I felt something special about personal development, about, you know, spiritual wisdom, about helping other people to awaken to their potential as well. And it was a feeling. It was just a feeling and maybe a tap on the shoulder that said you should be out there sharing what you know so that more people become aware of what's possible in their lives.
That's powerful. I think we all know about the preciousness of life. We all know about this fragile line that exists between us being here and us not being here. And we all know that ultimately one day we're going to die. But I think sometimes we recognize that logically, perhaps not emotionally recognize that. And it takes something like a car crash, a near-death experience just to waken things up. In those 25 years where you were kind of engaging in personal development but hadn't necessarily made that shift, what kind of things were you doing? What were you looking at? What was interesting you?
Yeah, you know, so what actually happened was the guy in Australia was running a seminar called Mind Powers. And it was really based on the book Think and Grow Rich by Napoleon Hill, Psycho-Cybernetics by Maxwell Maltz, and a couple of other books. And he gave us a book list, and I went through all the books and started reading. And I moved back to England, moved back to London. I went to the great bookshops that I loved in London. There was a bookshop called Mysteries, spiritual bookstore. You know, I think it closed just a few years ago, but it was in Covent Garden. And another one on the edge of Covent Garden, just off Charing Cross Road, was Watkins bookstore. And I used to hang around those bookstores. They were just full of amazing books I'd never seen the likes of. And here's the thing. My father was a chief librarian during his career. I never saw those kind of books in the library. And it was... So I went on a reading excursion for many years. I was a journalist for 30 years, so I love reading. But it was just exposing myself to all these kinds of... this kind of wisdom that no one really talked about. And I also did a seminar they called it the Forum back then. It used to be EST, Werner Erhard Training Seminars, came out of California in the 70s. Still around today, known as the Landmark Forum. And that was a really life-changing experience as well. It took you deep inside your mind, took you into your memory, took you into your past, took you into your beliefs and your emotions, and really uncovered what was in the mind that often gets hidden. You know, what we might call a subconscious part. So I was exploring. And what I wanted to do, I still wanted to be a seminar leader. I wanted to be a teacher, a personal development teacher. But I didn't think I was good enough, and I didn't know how to teach in a way that would get people results, I guess. I was scared of just being kind of a motivational teacher who made people feel good for a weekend, but nothing ever happened. So I went on a journey looking for, what's the source of all this personal development wisdom that's being spoken from the stage and written in the books? What's the real source? So I looked into Buddhism, a little bit of Zen, went back to the Vedas from India, looking at the Bhagavad Gita, looked at things like SRF. Now I'm not going to be able to remember what SRF stands for. Self-Realization Foundation of Yogananda, Paramahansa Yogananda, who wrote a great book called The Autobiography of a Yogi. And really just reading and studying, and I actually lived in Sedona for 3 years, which is in America, in Arizona, it's really it's like Glastonbury on steroids, if you know Glastonbury in Somerset. It's the center of the New Age movement and spirituality movement in America. And it has everything going on there. You can dip into everything there. Something that was really interesting, I went along to a small Buddhist temple there once, and they had a lama from Tibet came over. And this is really about my exploration and trying to convince myself that what I'm hearing is true. And it was quite a remarkable incident, because I'm sitting there in the audience, and there's maybe 60 people in this small room. And I saw what people call a halo. I saw a silver light over his head going from one shoulder to the other shoulder. I saw it. It was real. Nobody else seemed to see it. And I asked a few people afterwards. And just that experience told me I was on the right path. That experience of seeing something I'd never seen before, that I'd heard about, read about, but I didn't really believe was real until I saw it with my own eyes. It was like I was being, like he was reading my mind and telling me, you're on the right path, and what you're discovering is real. Because sometimes, even when we discover wisdom and knowledge, we still have the opportunity to doubt it, because we live in a duality and there's always the opposite available. So it was confirmation for me that I was on the right path. And it was a few years after that that I became a personal development teacher myself, when I met Bob Proctor. So I did a lot of experiences, a lot of digging around, a lot of listening, looking, checking out everything. What's the source of the wisdom that we teach as personal development teachers and speakers?
I've got 2 questions that have come to me as you've been describing this. I was enthralled, by the way, as you were speaking about that, and the halo and the exploration. I didn't want to have to come in with a question. I wanted you to just keep on talking. But 2 things came to me. I wonder if there's a right order that I need to ask them. So I hope that I get the right order. You may well tell me with the answers. The first thing I wanted to ask was, you had that time where you didn't believe in yourself. You didn't believe in your capabilities and the light within you as a teacher. But obviously one day you did, because you now do that. You now teach. You are now a seminar leader. Was there a step or a process where that self-belief came? How did you go from not having that self-belief to one day having that self-belief?
It is a process. I can't think of any one moment. It's not flashing into my mind. I did a bit of psychic work, so I can usually hear memories very fast, and I'm not hearing one. So I'm going to say there isn't a moment when you ask that question. I really think it's what you're saying. It's a process. It's a process where you keep studying, you keep learning, you keep thinking until you convince yourself. Now, on the one side, you can just choose to believe. Just instantly make the decision that you choose to believe. On the other side, it's a slow process of experiencing things and building up that conviction that, yeah, we're spiritual beings having a physical experience, perhaps. So there was no one point of realization that I can remember that made me think, yeah, because I think the doubts are always in the back of the mind. They're always available. It's whether you've built up a convincing case for yourself that you no longer have to listen to the doubts, that you choose that this is what I believe, and therefore this is what I teach, this is what I share. And I always say to people, nothing that I say is true. It's my belief and my opinion.
That's terrible marketing, Stuart. But I know what you mean.
If it helps you, if it empowers you, if you can use anything that I say to help you move forward and grow, then take it.
Yeah.
Yeah, but is it? Yeah, nothing I say is true. But I think there's a book once that was written a title saying everything in this book, nothing in this book is true or real. But if you can convince yourself, if you can choose to believe something, that's where we're trying to get to. We're trying to get to a point where we believe something that empowers us to move forward in what we think is our journey, our purpose, and lives into our vision. And that's what I believe.
Yeah. So my second question that I mentioned earlier is the name Bob Proctor has come up a few times in the conversation. And I feel that we couldn't go through this discussion today without talking about your mentor and talking about how he came into your life, how you came to be someone who teaches his program, and generally what influence he's had in your life and in your work.
Sure, thanks. Yeah, big influence. Bob Proctor, if you're not aware of him, you Google him, he's all over the internet, big YouTube channel. I was vaguely aware of him back in the around 2006, 2005, but he really came to my attention when Rhonda Byrne released the movie and the book The Secret, because he had a prominent role inside of that. And I was living in Sedona at the time, looking for my next step, what I was going to do. And I went, he just resonated with me. Some people do, some people don't. And I went along to a seminar that he was holding, 3-day seminar in Arizona, in Phoenix. And I think the first thing was that he started talking about Think and Grow Rich, the book by Napoleon Hill, which was the first personal development book I ever read. And it's like, this is good. And then his second book he mentioned was Psycho-Cybernetics, which was the second book I read that was on the list of that seminar leader gave me 30 years ago. And it's like, I'm listening to this guy at this point. But there was something that struck me. He was asking the audience in the room, how many people in the room, how many people in this room have earned $1 million in a year? And hands went up. And at that point, I wasn't really convinced that people did that. I wasn't really in tune with that. And I'm looking around, these are ordinary people here in the seminar with me. That interested me. Because it also transpired that he was helping people earn more money, helping people become wealthy if that's what they wanted, helping people do whatever they wanted to do. And that's what I was looking for. I was looking for somebody who knew how to help people achieve their goals. Not just inspire, motivate, and help them go out and do it for themselves, but really having a system, understanding how the mind works so that we can use the mind to achieve our goals. So I got a little bit more close to him, did one of his programs, understood that he knew. And then at the end of that program that I was doing, it was a year-long coaching program with him. He was actually starting up a program to teach people to teach and coach from his material. So he put together a lifetime of personal development material into a program that he called Thinking into Results, and was teaching, training people like myself to use his program to go out into the world and teach and coach from. And it's the compilation of his life's work, and yet you can't buy it from him. He only sells it through his trained coaches. And for me, what was there was, I was looking for a way to teach, looking for a way to coach, looking for a way to help people get the results they wanted. And I'm thinking, I don't know how to do this. I don't know how to put together material. I don't know how to make sure I put together the right material in the right way that people get results. And he comes along and says, you can have mine. And it's such a gift to be able to take someone who's amassed so much information and be given it to teach. So I was hooked. I was very much a fan of his already, but to be able to take his material. So I jumped on board his consultants program and became one of his consultants working for his company, the Proctor Gallagher Institute. And that's what I do full time now.
So, Stuart, can you tell us a little bit more about Thinking into Results? What is the underlying message, principle behind what Bob teaches, and ultimately now what you teach as well?
Sure, yeah. Inside of Napoleon Hill's work as well, you can have anything you want if you believe you can have it, and if you're willing to change the way you think. It's really simple, but it's difficult to put into practice. It takes time, it takes effort, it takes a willingness, but ultimately it takes a decision to go in a different direction from where you are. I would say that ultimately it's what we think and how we think that determines the results we get in life. So if you're not happy with the results you're getting, you've got to actually change the way you think. And people find that really hard to do. They're not actually sure how to change the way they think. They're not even sure what they really think, because a lot of what we think are beliefs that are created when we were 5 or 10, and they're somewhere in the back of our mind, like in the subconscious mind. They're hidden, but they're in the background running us like some kind of software program in our brain. And we have to be willing to investigate. So what we do is, basically, it's what would you really like to do with your life? What ultimately would you love to do that you're not doing because you don't think you can? And to explore the reasons why you don't think you can do what you really want to do. Why you gave up on your dream, or just why you don't believe in yourself. And that's what resonated with me with his work, because I didn't really believe in myself when I was younger, and I certainly didn't believe I could have what I really wanted. So it's an exploration of our beliefs, our hidden beliefs in the subconscious mind, the things that stop us, hold us back, and make us less than we think we are, or make us think we're less than we really are, is a better way of saying that. And creating new beliefs by thinking differently, thinking from the future instead of thinking from the present. The work that you do, David, and the podcast that you've created about being the author of your life, Bob Proctor's work speaks into that as well. We really are the authors of our life. We have within us everything we need to write our own script, to design our life the way we want it. But we don't realize that, or we don't know how to access it, or we don't know what's stopping us from finding it, right?
Yeah.
We really do. I mean, you know that, right?
Mm-hmm. No, definitely. That's that's the underlying principle of what I do. Is I honestly believe that any moment we can literally and figuratively take that pen and start changing the story that we're living to. And I know that you do that very much through looking at the mind, looking at the mental paradigms, looking into that subconscious, our beliefs of really being aware that we can do that. Because we can pick up that pen at any time, but most people leave the pen just lying there, or they continue to allow the pen to write the same story over and over and over.
The familiar story. Yeah, what I'm familiar with, and that's it. But it's what it is. It's our thoughts. What do we use our thoughts for? That we use them to tell a story. We tell the story of our life, and we tell the same story over and over, and it changes a little bit. But what we don't realize is we have the power with our thoughts and our imagination to tell an entirely new story at any moment we choose, like you just said. But we don't. We keep picking up the pen and writing the same story because that's the one we're familiar with. And the more we tell it, the more real it is, the more we believe that's all there is. And we get locked in a cycle of the same. And yet we can put that down. It's like putting the book down, picking up a new book, blank book, and like you say, and just creating a new story by using our thoughts and imagination. What was it Einstein say? It's one of my favorite lines from Einstein. Imagination is a preview of life's coming attractions.
It's a nice one.
No one's telling us what's coming. We make it of ourselves with our imagination. I think, was it him? No, it'd be probably Napoleon Hill who said that imagination is the most marvelous, miraculous, inconceivably powerful force the world has ever known. Because that's what we use to create our future. That's what we use to create a new story. Imagination. But as children, we're great at imagining and dreaming. But as adults, we're not. We're more logical, rational, and we have structures to live by.
Yeah.
Those structures that keep us stuck doing the same thing over and over. So what we do in Thinking into Results, and what Bob created, was the realization that there are two distinct ways of thinking from the present circumstances, the results you've got right now that keep you stuck in the pattern, or thinking from the future you want to create. And here's the thing, if you actually do this, and anybody listening can do this right now, which is, if you imagine something in your life right now that's not going too well, some area of your life that's not going well, and you think about it, what thoughts come up, what images come up, and what feelings attached to them? You get a kind of a bit of a downer feeling, a bit of a negative feeling, a bit of a heavy feeling in your heart, maybe. But then if you think of something else, either a beautiful time that you had in the past, or a dream of the future, something you really want, something that's really beautiful and you'd really want to have happen, Whether that's just going on a vacation to somewhere great or something you want to create in your life, what's the picture? And the picture, what thoughts does it create? And what feelings attached to that picture? A much more lighter, positive feeling. And that's the place that we need to create from. And that's what we do. We take away the doubts, the fears, and the beliefs that bring the negative feelings, and replace them with the positive, powerful new beliefs that allow us to think from the future we want to live into, and give us the feeling that allows us to take the action that makes it happen.
Yeah. So Stuart, I'd like to turn thinking into results onto you a little bit. No pressure. What I'd like to know is, how do you show up as the best version of you day to day? What enables you to get into that place of being a servant, being a leader, being a teacher?
How do I show up? How do I get into the space of showing up my best? Yeah. I check in. I'm always monitoring myself. So there was a phrase, a word, a technique. So I use techniques. I certainly start off the day with a routine, and I'm just going back to I keep calling it an anagram. That's not right, is it?
An acronym?
There was an acronym. Thank you very much. Excellent. Well done. You read my mind. From the first course I ever did 30 years ago, and I still remember it. CYT, Catch Yourself Thinking. CYT. I carry that around with me still 30 years later. Always checking in to see what I'm thinking. Catch yourself thinking. Change your thought if it's not empowering you. And cultivate your thoughts. So I use techniques like that. But I start off by, every time, when I wake up in the morning, I think a little bit like you as well. I check in to see what I'm grateful for. I remind myself what I'm grateful for. I reconnect with who I say I am, the person that I'm creating myself as. So I really connect with my heart and my purpose. And I'm also just checking in with my feelings to make sure that I'm not thinking the wrong thoughts. So that generates who I am during the day. But it's interesting that you asked that, because one of the things is I choose to show up. I create a new paradigm. I made a decision when I first started doing this work full time, and I quit. I didn't quit. I was made redundant I was kicked out by the universe from my job as a journalist in Arizona. And as a journalist, we were always missing deadlines, always a little bit late. And I was starting to show up to meetings with people and clients and prospects a little bit late. It's like, whoa, this is not good. And I made a decision in that moment, I'd never be late. I'll always be on time, and on time is always early. Always earlier than anybody else I'm meeting, always. And just in that moment, it changed. I was never late again. I'm always. But the second part of it was I decided to show up well. I heard Bob talk about one time when he was on the stage and he was physically ill, and he had a 4-hour event going on to a lot of people, hundreds of people, and he was physically ill that day. But he'd go out on stage, deliver, give the room something to do, and he'd go out and be ill, and then he'd come back. And his sales director was my personal coach for a while, and the one thing he said, there are 3 things you should always do as a professional, and that is to focus on your goal, lock onto your goal, always have a great attitude, and never let, he says paradigms, never let paradigms beat you. So a paradigm that I created was I will always show up with a positive attitude for the people I'm with, the people I'm meeting, whether that's my clients, people I'm meeting, people that I'm connecting with, that I'm helping, no matter how I feel beforehand. And listen, I still get these thoughts in my mind, I can't be bothered, it's one of the paradigms that brand me from childhood, or I don't want to. They show up in my mind. Or I just really don't feel like the energy, I'm not going to do well. But the moment I'm present with someone, face to face or on the phone, it changes, because I decided I would always show up. So a decision that I made allows me to show up really present with a positive attitude and good energy, and a listening for other people. So a decision.
Yeah.
Be the best I can.
That is really interesting. I'm really glad you used that word, decision. I think that's so key for listeners to understand is that so much of this personal development game is about decisions, the decisions that we make every single day. And what science and psychology is showing increasingly more and more is that our happiness is determined by a decision to be happy. And it sounds like the most woo-woo self-help new age thing in the world. Think yourself happy and you will be happy. But that's what the science is starting to tell us, is that happy people have a very different way of thinking compared to unhappy people. And that very different way of thinking, when you boil it down and you get to the foundations of it, is they make a decision to be happy, and so they are. Yes, there is habits and techniques and strategies that follow that decision, but the beginning, the origin, is that point of decision. So I'm so glad that you used the word decision, that in terms of how do I show up today, you make the decision. I am going to show up today. You make the decision, and so you do.
Yeah, it's brilliant. You know, when you understand this concept and you practice it and try it out, you'll find that the subconscious mind will understand the instruction, I've decided, if you have emotion with it, strong emotion with it. And it will just do it automatically for you. So even if you don't feel like it, the subconscious knows that in a certain moment, you're going to be a certain way, and it will cause you to be a certain way. You know, actually talking about happiness, in the seminar, the forum, they teach that idea that you just explained. They say, you know, do you want to know the secret of happiness? Do you want to know how to be happy? Of course, who doesn't want to know that? What's the secret of happiness? Tell me. And I sometimes use this in my talks as well. Secret of happiness? Be happy. Be happy. It's a choice. It's a decision. No. What about the world? No, you can choose to be happy. Yeah, so you're right, David. Yeah, decide. You just can decide, but you've got to practice it.
Yeah.
It doesn't come naturally.
Yeah, definitely.
Don't do it once and fail and think that it doesn't work. It works. You can choose. And when you can decide that, you know, here's something I'm hearing Bob right now in my mind. Give yourself a command and do it. When you can make a decision and follow through on it, when you can give yourself a command and do what you told yourself to do, wow, you become so powerful. And it is, you're right. The beginning point is the ability to make a decision and stick by it. I think he always says a committed decision. Like absolutely no turning back from this. I'm totally committed to making this happen or doing this. With that power that the subconscious will feel it. And we're trying to tell the subconscious to create a paradigm for us, to create a way of being, to create a belief. Because when you create that belief and it's in your subconscious mind, it's automatic. The subconscious will allow you to be that. It will guide you to be that way. There's no effort involved, right? And that when you have a paradigm for something.
Yeah. I think the word decision is a very interesting one. When you look at the root of the word decision, when you break it down into its Latin roots, it means to cut off from all else. So actually the decision is the easiest thing in the world, because there is no other option, there is no other variable. When you make that decision, that is the only choice, that's the only path. The difficulty comes actually when you're in a moment of indecision, when you're saying, am I going to wake up or hit the snooze button? Am I going to go to the gym or lie on the sofa? Am I going to pick up this phone and make a difficult call, or am I not? That's when things are difficult, when you're in this moment of indecision. Actually, when the decision is there, it's the easiest thing in the world, because the only thing to do is to do it. Yeah.
No, you're right. Absolutely. You know, one of the most powerful concepts that you can master. And Bob writes an article about it for the program that we teach from. That procrastination, you know, it's the enemy of success. The inability to make a decision. Shall I, shan't I? I don't have enough information. And he always says, you make a decision with all the information you have right now. You don't need any more information than you've already got. And the way will show up. And if there's more that you need later on, you get it. But here's what he always says about goals. You can have anything you want if you set the goal and you decide that you're going to get it. You don't need to know how you're going to get it when you make the decision, which is what puts people off. People think they need to know how before they make a decision. Well, I'm not sure I can do this. I need more information, so I'm willing to make the decision. They never make the decision. The old paradigm wins in that. You don't need to know how you're going to do something when you make the decision to do it. The how shows up along the way.
Yeah, definitely.
But people don't always, people don't know how to make decisions. It's a hard thing to do. Once again, practice.
So, Stuart, could you tell us about an important decision you feel you've made in your life to round off this theme of decisions?
Gosh. An important decision I made. Yeah, I think the most important decision that comes to my mind right now is the decision to join Bob Proctor's company as a consultant, because that's taken me on the journey that I really wanted to do. So when I say 30 years ago, it was something I wanted to do but never did. It required a decision. And it took me a long time to reach that point where I made it. And like I just said earlier, it felt like the universe kicked me out because I was clinging to a job as a newspaper front page editor of one of America's largest daily newspapers in Phoenix. I kept saying, my wife will tell you, you were saying for 2 years you didn't want to be there. You wanted to quit, and you wouldn't quit, even though you knew about Bob and you knew about thinking of results, and you just wouldn't quit. And then as the newspaper industry contracted and they kicked me out, it's like, yeah, I'm just going to do what I said I would always do. I don't care that I don't know how I'm going to succeed. I don't care that it's going to be difficult. I don't care that there's a lot to learn. As an entrepreneur and running your own business, I had no clue what I was doing. But I knew in that moment, and I rang my wife and told her, and she was happy about it. And I then went to one of my accountability partners and straight away drove over to him and told him. And the thing he said was, "Congratulations, it's happened." So those two people, my wife and my business partner, both said, "I'm glad you made that decision. It's about time." But it took a bit of a big nudge from the universe. Now, I could still have run back to safety, but I made that decision. And that launched me in a completely different direction, a new phase of my life, the phase of my life that I really wanted to live. I've been wanting to live for many years and was scared to do it. So that was the most amazing decision I've made. Probably, apart from marrying my wife. Choosing my wife.
Oh, you should have said that first, Stuart, in case she's listening.
She'll probably listen in, but she knows. Yeah, isn't it amazing? The people we have that support us in our life are so important. The people that really support us, that believe in us, because I had to have her believe in me to be able to believe in myself, to go through the challenges that I've had to go through to reach the level of success that I have. I couldn't do it without somebody else. We always need somebody else's support in the background, don't we?
Oh yeah, absolutely. I agree. My partner's the same. I wouldn't be here without my partner, and that's not exaggeration. That's just, it's hugely powerful having someone who sees what you sometimes don't see in yourself. And that can be different people in our lives. That can be a teacher, that can be a coach, that can be someone up on a stage, or it's your best friend, the person that you love.
Yeah.
So having them is really important. I'm glad you said that.
Yeah. It's the other half of us that allows us to be all we can be, because it's hard bringing out the best of ourselves. It's not an easy journey, is it?
No, definitely not.
Having someone there walking it with us is so important. Yeah, it's so hard to do this alone. Yeah. So some respects it's that partner. Some respects it's that coach. Hey, let's plug our own business. It's having the right people in your circle around you that believe in you. And this is one of the things I always tell my clients as well. That when they tell me what it is they really want to do, and I can hear the passion for it, I can say that I believe in your dream more than you do. I believe in you more than you do, because I can't hear the doubts that you have in your the little voice in your mind. Your doubts, I can't hear them in my mind. I don't have them, which is why I can believe more powerfully than you can at this time. And that's what we need. We need someone who believes in us when we doubt ourselves. Yeah.
So, talking of challenging times, we all face challenges in our lives. We all face challenges along the journey of growth and development. You've been no different. What do you feel has helped keep you motivated during these challenging times?
Sure. When I'm challenged, a couple of things that kind of come to mind straight away. I'm kind of hearing clients. Oh, you know what it is? You know what? So my clients keep me motivated. I love that. I love the idea that I'm going to wake up today and help somebody, and that no matter how hard it is for me, I got to show up for somebody else. So other people. But there's one other thing as well, which is I can't quit because I believe in this journey so much. I believe in the truth of spiritual wisdom so much that if I were ever to give in, to think I'm going to fail, to think I should quit and turn my back on it, I would be turning my back on something that I truly believe. And it's that belief in what I've learned and discovered, the desire to share the wisdom that's in the world and just share it from my voice, that keeps me going. It's almost like I want to prove this is true. I can't stop, because if I stop, I'm just going to give up 50 years or 40 years of thinking, reading, believing, hoping, turning my back on that. I can't turn my back on what I've learned.
Mm-hmm.
Got to prove that. It's the determination to prove. But there you go. Also, the desire to share, so that other people have the opportunity to awaken to their own power, their own potential. Because my purpose, I choose that my purpose to be is to awaken people to their purpose and inspire them to make a difference in the world. And I don't want to give up on that purpose. I don't want to negate the purpose I created and the beliefs that I have. So I can't stop. Once you get into something as powerful as this, you can't turn back. You can't give up. You've got to find the way.
I totally agree with that, and I resonate quite deeply with those words. That's what I feel myself. I feel a very similar feeling that, like, for me, it's almost a question of, there is no question of motivation, because I don't see me doing anything else or pursuing any other path than the path I'm pursuing. So motivation, feeling like it, isn't an issue.
Yeah. Mm.
For people who maybe don't have that within them, or they haven't quite found that spark, that passion, that purpose, whatever label you put to it,
yeah,
how do you think you go about finding something like that?
Yeah, what comes to my mind is the way to create that motivation or that passion to move forward is you've got to believe in something. You've got to create something that you want more than anything else. You've got to be willing to dream a little bit. As adults, we give up. It's kind of, as children, we have the ability to fantasize and dream. As adults, we're told not to. We're told to be educated, logical, and follow a certain way. And we lose the dream. You've got to give yourself permission to dream again. We all have a dream. We all have a purpose and a dream. We just do. Sometimes it's hard to find it. But when you can find that dream, that future that you would love to live into, you've got to breathe life into it. You've got to cling to it. You've got to make that the reason why. And some days, I was talking to someone today about this, she was really off, she was down, she was in a bad place. Just go sit and just give yourself permission to recreate the dream. Try to sit with it until it starts to come back to life. Because when it does, the good feeling with it will come, and that will shift any bad feelings or negativity you have. It's a way of shifting out of the negativity. There's lots of little techniques, but I think that's the best that I would ever offer, is create that beautiful dream, attach a great, powerful, positive, emotional feeling to it, and go back to it whenever you're not feeling your best. Allow that vision, that dream, to re-inspire you.
Mm-hmm.
It takes a bit of practice, and it takes willingness. I say give yourself permission, because I feel miserable, I don't want to, I can't be bothered, I'm sick, I'm ill, I'm depressed, you don't understand. Yeah, got it. Put that aside and be willing to go looking for the opposite. Go look for the good in you. It's there. If you've had it once, it's there. Why is your negativity more true than your positivity? But it's easier to dwell in the negative than it is to create the positive. Just connecting, creating an image in your mind that has a beautiful feeling attached to it, and sitting until you connect with it. And that's the hard part. You've got to sit and create it.
I'm going to hit you with another existential question, Stuart. I'm not letting you off easy on this one. How do we bring more love into the world?
It's really easy. You be loving. What's the Gandhi quote that suddenly comes to mind? Be the change you wish to see in the world. If you care that there should be love in the world, then care enough to be someone who projects love. It's a choice, it's a decision again, isn't it? It's how do you feel love? Where do you feel love? So first of all, I'm looking for, how do I feel love? What's the memory of love in my heart? And then I'm going out and being that, projecting that, speaking from. Okay. So what I think we need to do is create that feeling of love in our heart and speak from the feeling. That allow our words to be infused with that feeling. Our words will be informed by an energy that another person picks up. It's not what we say, it's how we say it. It's not who we are, it's who we're being. So we have to be the love that we wish there to be. It starts with us. And I think it starts with loving ourselves as well. It's really hard to love others if we don't love ourselves. In the true sense of what you're talking about. It's not falling in love, it's a love for people. And not judging them for who they're being in the moment, which I'm going to say is a bunch of paradigms. Look behind the paradigms and recognize who they are. There's a beautiful exercise, once again. I'm going to borrow from the forum here. Thank you, Werner. There's a phrase where two people sit together in front of each other and look deeply into each other's eyes, and they say this. Oh gosh, I can't even do it for the love that's coming up here. I am you. Wow, I can't do it. I am you. Creating me. Creating you. Wow. So that gets me every time. That's love. I can feel that. That is love coming up from me, just from the memory of that exercise. I am you. Creating me. Creating you. We're one. And when you remember we're one, there's no separation. You can't help but feel the love. So, yeah, wow. It's beautiful. Beautiful question.
Oh, beautiful answer as well. Thank you for sharing.
Yeah. It just gets created. Yeah. And then you go out, be from that. You speak from that. You live from that. Yeah.
We've talked about children a couple times in this conversation, talking about the imagination of children, this amazing creative capacity that we have that somehow gets lost along the way for many of us as adults. And one thing that I notice about our field, about personal development, is so many people come to it late in life or even later in life, whether you're in your 20s, your 30s, your 40s, your 50s. So much of personal development, I think, therefore becomes not an addition process, but a subtraction process of subtracting away all the layers, all of the dysfunctional paradigms, all of the baggage that we've picked up throughout those years to get back to the true essence of who we are. And what I'd love to see so much more in the future generations is personal development not having to do that, not having to be a subtraction process, but cultivating and generating from much earlier in life. So with this in mind, what advice would you give to a 5-year-old to help them to live a fulfilled life?
You can do it. Believe in yourself. I think, it's interesting. I did a seminar in Dubai a couple of years ago, and there was an anthropology professor in the audience, and she studied at Cambridge, taught in Canada, and she came to the next seminar the next day as well, and sat down and had a conversation with me, invited me to go back to her home and talk to her 12-year-old daughter, because as an anthropologist, she wanted to know if children could understand what we were teaching. And of course they can. It's really easy for them. And this is happening more and more. But you know what I'd say? I'd say don't let anyone tell you that your dreams aren't possible. Dream your dream, fantasize, create your future, And don't let anybody, particularly adults, tell you that your dream isn't possible. And we hear a lot of these stories. There's one actually, a really great one on YouTube. Steve Harvey, the American TV show host, he tells a great story. He wrote a book about it. I think it's called Lift the Lid, in which he went through this at school. They were asked to write a little essay. What do you want to be when you grow up? And he wrote, I want to be on TV. I want my TV show. And he lived in West Virginia, a very poor part of the country in America. And his teacher, put red marks across it and said, "You failed, do it again." And he took it home to his mother, and I think it was his father said, "Why did she fail you?" He said, "Well, I wanted to be on TV." And she said, "No one in this community has ever been on TV. You don't know anyone who's been on TV. You can't possibly be on TV." So his father said, "Okay, go back, write it again, give it to her, tell her you want to be a baseball player." He did that. He said, "But what I want you to do is I want you to take that original essay and put it in your drawer and read it every day." And he did that, and he became a very famous and successful TV host on American daytime TV. His father said, "Dream your dream." His teacher said, "Don't be stupid. You can't do that. Don't let anyone tell you that your dream's not possible. Now go out and find out who you need to be, what you need to learn to do it. Because you can."
Oh, a story. I hadn't heard that before. Reminds me of a similar story that I've heard. Now, you've got to be careful with these stories because sometimes they get misattributed to wherever they came from. Anyway, this apparently comes from John Lennon. And John Lennon was given that assignment when he was in school. Teacher says to the class, "Right, class, I want you to write down what do you want to be when you grow up?" So John Lennon, he gets the assignment. What do you want to be when you grow up? John Lennon writes, "Happy." The teacher says, "I'm sorry, John, you didn't understand the assignment." John says, "I'm sorry, teacher, you don't understand life." Now, I don't know if that's true. I don't know if it's John Lennon, but that's who I heard it attributed to.
If it isn't true, it should be. Yeah, it's great. It's beautiful. Yeah. You're missing the point, teacher.
But yeah.
Don't you want to be happy? No, it's not possible. Yeah.
It's only possible if you make the decision to be happy, as we were speaking about earlier.
Yeah.
I think those are two big things. If children can be encouraged to find what makes them happy and pursue their dream, which are kind of synonymous with each other, they feed into each other, then I think we're doing pretty well. I think that's the purpose of education, is to make people happy and to help them find what their purpose in life is, what their mission in life is.
Yeah, instead of telling us what we should do, help us find what we're meant to do. Yeah.
Okay, Stuart, I'd like to begin to round off, and we've got a couple of concluding questions, but these don't have to be short answers just because we're rounding off. You can elaborate as much as you like, depending on what comes up.
Okay.
First, these questions is, what are you grateful for?
Gosh, I'm grateful for so much. What am I not grateful for? That's a shorter list. So I do a gratitude exercise every day. What am I grateful for? 5 things I'm grateful for. Puts me in a great frame. I'm grateful for all the things that I'm going to be creating in the future, because if I'm grateful for them, they'll happen. I don't wait to be grateful for things to show up. I'm grateful for them. If I can see them in my imagination and I'm grateful for them, they get created. What am I grateful for? Well, we spoke of one thing already that's a very powerful thing to be grateful for, which is the people that support us, my wife. Always, I'm grateful for her support and who she is. The list, it could be gone forever. What flashes up, because I do this every day. Certain things are flashing up. Really grateful for the path, the journey that I'm on. Grateful for the moments that showed me the way. Grateful for the people that showed up. Bob Proctor, of course, comes to mind simply because of what he's done for so many people and how he shared his wisdom. I'm grateful for challenges. I'm grateful for the challenges I've had that have allowed me to get past the limitations, the limiting person that I thought I was. Sometimes we don't acknowledge the challenges that in the moment are difficult, the difficulties. But when we look back, they were the great moments of our life. The things that we overcame, the things that challenged us and caused us to find the courage, caused us, and this is available for every human being in the face of a challenge. It causes us to go within us and grow and find a part of us that we didn't know was there, who we can really be. Because I'm grateful that I got to become more than I thought I would be. Looking back, I didn't really think I was going to amount to much. I'm grateful for the moments, the people, the wisdom, the knowledge, the learning opportunities that allowed me to become more than I might otherwise have been.
That's fantastic.
Thanks.
This question might very well link on to that. You said you were grateful for what you've been able to become and more than you could ever hope to become. With that in mind, what legacy do you want to leave after you've gone?
Gosh. I'm going to be flippant. I don't care. I'm living in the moment. I'm not sure I want to be remembered. I'm not sure I need a legacy. I'm not sure. That's interesting. Is a legacy an egotistical thing? No, probably not. No, because it's okay, yeah. I'm kind of processing that as I go along, trying to work that out. I hadn't thought about it. I'd like to write some books, but what's the point of that? My legacy is if I can contribute to the awakening of humanity in some small way that allows people to awaken to their potential and transform their lives to live better lives, and in turn make a difference in their world and their community. My legacy is simply living the best I can to help other people become the best they can be, and if I achieve that with a few people, that's enough. That's my contribution. I don't have something that I'm leaving behind. I don't need to be remembered. I just want to know that I'm doing what I can do to make a difference in the world, to make the world a better place. Oh, gosh, yeah. In a little way. In what little way I can, yeah.
So, Stuart, the name of the podcast, as we talked about at the beginning, is Author Your Life. And Author Your Life is based on the premise of living more authentically, to help people to find their authentic self. And we were talking about roots of the words as well in this discussion. And what really fascinates me about the word authentic is when you look at the root of the word and you dive into the Greek root of the word authentic, it means author. To be authentic means to be the author of your own life. And so that's where my message and my principles have come from. For you, Stuart, what does the word authentic mean to you?
The author, the self. So true to the self, true to yourself. To be able to learn how, discover how, to be true to yourself. Authenticity is a hard thing to be. It's that ability to have integrity, to be honest, to speak from your values and not be manipulated by the world, by circumstances, to stand up for what you believe. It's interesting, isn't it? It's like, who do you believe yourself to be? Who are you at your core? So the authentic self is discovering who you are at your core and then creating from that so that you're true to yourself, to thine own self be true. Yeah, we've always had that wisdom with us. Know thyself, Apollo, Temple of Apollo. Know thyself, to thine own self be true. And if you can do that, everything else follows. I think that wisdom's always been there. So yeah, finding the core of who you are, believing in that, and speaking that truth, whatever that may be for you, with courage, because sometimes it takes a lot of courage to do that. Yeah. So this is what the self-discovery process is about. This is what personal development is about: discovering that true self, and then finding a way to express it, to be it, to be in harmony with that self and express it in the world. Because if you can, you're going to make a difference. You're going to contribute to a lot of people if you can do that. Yeah.
Awesome. So, Stuart, for the listeners who've liked what you've been talking about, who feel that they resonate with some of your message and some of the principles that you've been talking about, where's the best place to find you? Your website, social media? Is there anything that you'd like to point people towards if they want to find out a little bit more about who you are and what you do?
Okay, well, thank you. Yeah, thank you, David. The easiest way to connect with me is from my website, which is my name, stuartdoughty.com. That's the simplest way to find me. Yeah, I'm on Facebook. You can connect with me there. Always happy to respond to any questions. So yeah, feel free to connect with me, Stuart Doughty, on Facebook, or Stuart Doughty Coaching, my business page, or go to the website and start to follow the trail to me. Here's something interesting. My phone number's out there somewhere, and I always say, call me. I'm happy for you to call me. But yeah, just there's a trail out there. So either Facebook's the easiest way if you want to talk to me instantly, or my website if you want to learn a little bit more about what I do. So thank you, David.
No worries, Stuart. Thank you for joining me today. Thank you for sharing your wisdom and in particular sharing a real raw, sensitive emotion throughout this interview. Some of your answers have come from a very genuine emotional place, and I really appreciate your openness and your authenticity in sharing that. So it's been a pleasure to speak with you, Stuart. So thank you very much for joining us today.
Thank you, David. Yeah, the pleasure's mine. It's been a wonderful conversation. Thank you for creating the space to allow me to speak into.
Thank you so much for listening to this episode. If you enjoyed this episode, I'd appreciate it hugely if you could head over to iTunes and leave a rating and review for the podcast. With your review, please be as honest and detailed as you can be, because with honest and detailed feedback, that helps me to adapt and grow this podcast to most serve you, the listener. Also, if you enjoyed this episode, then make sure you subscribe to the podcast. That way you aren't going to miss any of the future episodes that we've got lined up for you. Until next time, remember that you are the author of your life. You hold the pen, and you can write whatever script you want for yourself. So go out today and write yourself a beautiful story.